Welcome to day 5 of I4, and it wouldn't be an I4 intervention without the amazing Shanna McAlarnen from in.cent.ive, here to work with us on reading the room, taking the temperature, and making sure we're all checked in.
All right, Shanna, we'll give it off to you.
Oh, hi, everybody. It took me a second to come off mute. That was a really great introduction. Thanks, Liz. And thank you for hanging tight for a minute while I restarted my Teams, of course. But I also really appreciate everyone being on camera today, just so I can see you and we can kind of interact and have, more of a conversation. So before I get started, a little bit about me. I am a life coach and the founder of in.cent.ive, a coaching and empowerment company for those who are wanting to get to know every part of themselves on a deeper level and become, the best version of themselves in life and work and everywhere. And I'm also a very good friend and partner of the EVT team. And this is my second, yay, and this is my second round of being part of the I4 intervention and having these, conversations to create change in our lives and in the veterinary field, because I know all of you know it's really, really needed, especially right now. So I love the topic that we're talking about today, kind of like reading the room, checking our temperature. I know it's kind of a cheeky way to, reflect what we're talking about today, but this is like one of my favorite things to talk about. And I think it's really important in the veterinary field because you guys are used to probably taking the temperatures of everyone else before yourselves. And I think even carving out some time to talk about ourselves is really important. So, cheeky. Yeah, I know, right? I love it. That was all Liz. I cannot even take the credit, but I think I'm going to continue.
Butt jokes.
They're everyone's favorite, right? Butt jokes are always a favorite. So I want to poll you, and you can answer either. I would say if the chat is open, answer in the chat, or if you're brave enough to come off mute and just tell me the answer. I have 2 questions for you. So on a scale of 1 to 10, and I know our lives differ, but on a scale of 1 to 10, what is your general stress levels, with like 1 being the lowest and 10 being the highest? Where do you fall normally?
I fall in the middle.
Like a 5?
Yeah, because my stress is different than when I was actively working in veterinary medicine, like managing a practice, because now I own my own business. So I have a different set of stress, but it doesn't affect me as negatively because it's self-inflicted. It's for my own dreams, it's for my own goals, it's for my own company growth and my team growth. So it's a different form of stress that is not as unhealthy for me as what I previously experienced. So I'm in that middle of the road, but I have better control because it's me and my company.
I love that, Rhonda. Thanks for saying the number and the reason why, and the difference between the two. I think I'm gonna probably touch on that a little bit, but I think that was a great segue into like the rest of the conversation. So thank you. I also saw who else chatted. I'm trying to look at the chat.
I think that was Amanda.
Amanda, 4 to 5, depending on the day. Okay.
I'd have to say on a normal work day, it's between 8 and 9. We're just slammed. It's a 7-doctor practice, and we're still doing curbside. So it's been like that for what, a year and a half now. So it's insane.
Yeah. Do you work for a specialty practice? Is it
no? It's a general practice, and we see pretty much everything. So yeah, you never know what you're going to get, which I love. But again, it's just nonstop. And I think people are just so over the curbside thing too. So, and they take it out on me, or, those of us who you know, the techs who go out and get them. So it's hard.
Yeah. That's a high number. Hopefully we can help you alleviate some of
Yeah, well, that's the conversation too, because Tracy, when you say it's at a 8 or 9 because you're slammed, my thought is, you know, what's the stress? Is it just high-paced movement? Is it, you know, difficult clients? Is it that just you don't get a break to, you know, eat when you need something? Like, what is it that is creating the 8 or 9?
I'd say all of the above, really. And I think it's become so draining on not just the techs and the doctors, but even on our front end staff. You know, the front end staff is getting the phone calls for the check-ins, and then, you know, I've been in my car with my dog or my cat or my lizard for 30 minutes and it's 95 degrees outside, and you know, so by the time you get there, they're already in a high stress level, and on top of just the regular veterinary medicine type of stuff, that people are taking their stress out on us. And I'm a very empathic person, so I inhale their stress. So,
For sure.
a lot of that is just on me. I know that.
Well, thank you.
I'll let somebody else talk, because I'm not the only one in this boat, I know. So.
You are absolutely not, and that's why I asked you for a little bit more context, because I know what you're speaking to is for not everyone, because everyone has different lives and situations, but like probably for most of the field, especially right now, that's the general pulse that I'm getting, is what you said.
Okay.
Anywhere from probably on a scale of 1 to 10, my guess was that you're at least a 5, and probably some of you are at a 10. And so it sounds like that's where all of you are. Okay, so my next question is also on a scale of 1 to 10. And this is not a trick question, but this is not a trick question, I promise. On a scale of 1 to 10, if you could choose your stress level, and 0 is not a choice because we're human and life causes stress no matter where we are or what we do, so it's not a thing. But if you could actually choose, ideally, overall, what number on the scale would you actually want it to be? And there's no wrong choice here. Like, I'm not getting you to say 1 or 2. I'm really just having us think about it. You know, some of us really like to like feel the pressure, like in a way, like Rhonda was talking about, you know, different kinds of stresses. It's not that we don't want stress, it's just a different kind and how we relate to it in our own lives. So at 3, I saw Kate was like 3, 4, Liz was 4.
I think to that point, you know, I definitely, you know, you can take me out of the ER, which I took myself out, but that mentality doesn't go away, right? So I'm always on like a steady state of alert. And with 2 small humans and pets in the home, always on alert. But even more than that, I find, to Rhonda's point before, you have those good stressors, right? Like, oh yeah, I love that, Rhonda. Motivational stress, but being able to let it go. Yes. And that's, I think I like to have that. Like, what's my impetus? What's my get up and go? And for me, it can be stressful when I've got, you know, veins to create and a presentation to develop and a training program to go over here and do, and just kidding, swim practice. Oh, we need to eat at some point today. But they're all good things. Which is very different from when I was, you know, one of the training coordinators in the ER to like, okay, I have 6 new hires. My team of trainers is about ready to take my head off because they're just done. We've got 72 patients in hospital, and that's just the ones that are admitted, and we have to do. Oh. So it's trying to, you know, I don't want to be up here, but I don't want to be apathetic either. I like to have that little bit of internal combustion engine to keep going.
So
Yeah.
I'll be the numbers nerd and say I think of it as an average, right? To your point, I don't ever want to have stress. Even the good stress of like exercise, that is a stress on the body, and I love those endorphins, but I want it to average out a little bit lower. And there are going to be those days where it's 8 and 9, and hopefully there are those vacation days where it's 1, maybe 2. You know, so I think I would like my average to be a little bit lower than it is now. And for me, I find the big thing, especially with kids, is when I'm out of routine, when we have our schedule and it is going to plan, I'm pretty good even if it's busy. When we fall out of routine, I just can't get it together.
Thank you. Thanks, Kate, for all of those shares. It's like all of that was like very everyday, real life things that everyone's up against. So thank you for saying it. So the thing is, so here's why I asked you the last question of where do you want it to be? Because your internal temperature has everything to do with the number that you chose. So the communication that you have with yourself is your thermostat. And if you're not checking on it, then you have no idea where it is. So you have no idea how to bring it up, and you have no idea how to bring it down, and you have no idea to get the number that you chose. And you end up just going along with a bunch of stuff and dealing with a bunch of stuff. And that ends up being a whole different experience. And so the opportunity is that there's a lot of better experiences to have by actually putting this idea into practice. And so, like, for example, like, you know, I always love to use emergency for some reason. I don't know. I think it's just like maybe the most, like the most fast-paced thing, the place that I think has a lot of stress. But it's like if you walk into an appointment and, you know, you're annoyed by it or it causes you a lot of stress, it's like, what happened? Was it that you ran around all day and you just needed a break and didn't get it? Is it that you didn't have your coffee and that's like deal breaker for you? Like you can't go into an appointment without it? Did you not get fed? Was it how that person talked to you? Did they remind you of someone else that always makes you feel bad about yourself and you haven't quite like figured out that relationship? Like, it's not about the things that are happening. It's what's actually going on inside of you and how you're reacting to it. So your communication is like, it's like the difference between being received and being resented, honestly. And that's like for you and for other people. The way you communicate with yourself is like how you're receiving experiences. And it's either, are you going to receive the experience that you want to have, or are you going to resent it? And when you're coming across as someone else, they're thinking the same thing. Like, are they getting what you're putting down from the way you want it to be received? Or are you just in your state of stress and that's what someone else is receiving? And they might not actually like it. So it kind of goes both ways. It's like your internal thermostat is your experience of life and how everybody else experiences you too. And so I just want to have that, like, to think about that for a second, because what we all want is to have better experiences and to be received in a positive way. And it's like, this is the thing to work on. This is the thing to be thinking about. And I'm really glad you brought up, I don't know, who brought up the empathy piece? Was it Tracy? Tracy, okay, yeah. So I find, especially in this industry, you're so, or probably even taught, you're so used to taking everyone else's temperature. Like, you know, you TPR all day and you're probably the last person that you think about at the end of the day. I don't know. Is this true for anyone? Does anyone, like, do you think about yourself first, last, in the middle, somewhere on a break? Liz. After swim practice, 7 p.m. But one of the things is like, and if you have a different story, please tell me, I'd love to hear it, but no one really falls into this field. I find that like no one just accidentally stumbles by accident. You actually chose it. Like, you have a certain type of empathy that is really special and unique, and you chose this field because you wanted to help and make a difference and take care of a living being that can't really speak for itself, and you want to heal and be a caretaker and you want to do all these things. So you did this on purpose, but it comes with its own animal, because you end up giving and giving and giving and TPRing all day, and you're the last to take a temp on yourself. And that actually is a problem. That's where burnout happens. that's where stress levels become 9s or 10s, and there's no way of like doing anything about it. So the opportunity is to actually start to check in with yourself. Like, and if we can go back, let me backtrack. Remember the number that you said in the beginning. Was it a 3 or 4? What would you need to have in place for that number to actually become true? And it's not like a rhetorical question. Like really, if someone had a thought or like a feeling on it, I'd love to hear it in the chat or just even off mute of like what you were thinking of.
I actually had to learn this lesson. It happened to me. So I've been down this road with working at a 10 or 11 for 16 hours straight for years. And my body broke down and I physically got sick. I got an autoimmune disease and my doctor said it's 100% from stress and not taking care of myself. That autoimmune disease, I now have to be on chemotherapy drugs to keep it at bay. So it took me out of the practice. So I had to leave. I can't be around animals because I can't get sick. And I can't be around people that much because I can't get sick. So now knowing that, I do check in with myself often. How much am I pushing myself? How much am I taking on? Can I take on that client? Should I do that presentation? Should I write that article? I really have to step back and check. And that lesson to me is why I work so hard in this industry, hoping to teach others that I am that cautionary tale that you can break yourself. You know, just because we can work those hours and maintain that emergency and do all of that stuff doesn't mean we should, because now I get to live with this for the rest of my life. Veterinary medicine will go away. So I do check my temperature often. Sometimes I don't grow something in my garden because I'm like, no, that's kind of high maintenance and it's a pain in the butt. So it's minor temperature checks and it's also major.
Wow, Rhonda, thank you for sharing that. Like you're a prime example of like someone who has gone through the motions and the process and learning a lesson that you'll have forever. And that like, I mean, on one hand, it's great that you get to teach this, but like, you know, the consequence, you still had to take on that consequence. I don't know if you've heard of the saying, I might say it wrong, but it's like, if you're not focusing on your wellness, like you're choosing your illness or something along those lines. I don't know if anyone like, if it's worded different, let me know. But when you said that, I had just thought about that. Tracy, were you going to say something?
I'm kind of in the same boat as Rhonda. I actually got COVID at work. And I have, A, I'm allergic to dogs, B, I have asthma, and C, I have an autoimmune disorder. So I know I'm a glutton for punishment. I don't only work at the animal hospital like 50, 55 hours a week. I teach dog training at PetSmart, and I teach in an industrial school here in town. So I really need help with boundaries. You know, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, my husband's a pastor, so I'm a pastor's wife. You know, I really need help setting up boundaries, and I'm 50. So, you know, it's something that I know in the back of my head, but I don't do. I'm a terrible patient.
A terrible patient.
I am.
I'm
so
sure
I appreciate people like you and Liz, because I don't think, I know I'm not the only one. I work with a whole bunch of us that are way overachievers. So I think we all need to hear that motivation that you give, Shanna, and listen and avoid burnout and avoid one more suicide and things like that. I know we're crying for help, and I think Rhonda highlighted it. Our bodies are just going screaming at us to slow down.
Yeah. And to your point, you know, being an empath like you are, creating boundaries is very hard. And I can relate on a different level. I'm a pastor's kid. So
You're okay.
Wow.
I've been there. It's not an easy road for the family to walk, because not a lot of people respect those boundaries either. So it's definitely a lot to juggle, and that's, I'm so grateful to know Shanna on a personal and a professional level, because the boundaries that she talks about and having that check of like, the scaling is important. And we have a pain scale at work, right? We have a body condition scale. This is ours, and you're worth it, because if you're not okay, who are we there for ultimately? Our patients. They can't be okay if you're not okay.
And that's what keeps me going, is the patient. So,
And that's exactly where I was going to go, Tracy. I'm very similar, and I have birthed an empath as well, so I watch her do the same. And I think for me, it's about a disappointment, right? If I don't do this, is somebody else going to do a good job? And who am I going to disappoint? And at the end of the day, the answer to that is never me. And we should look at, when we don't set boundaries and we push ourselves too hard, that we're going to disappoint ourselves. And I don't do it either. It's way easier to say than to do on my own. But that's what I thought of as we were talking. For me, it's about disappointment, but it's never about disappointing myself.
Kate, thank you for saying that part, because I'm sure like we're all thinking that too. And like you just reminded me of like, I don't know, maybe this is not everywhere, but at least I know from my experience, there's even kind of a stigma, I guess I think that's the word I want to use, around almost like not having boundaries is some type of superpower. Like if I can do it all and I can run around and see all these appointments, like somehow I'm better, like somehow I'm a better person, somehow that makes me, and honestly, like it's the opposite. It's the opposite because that's how burnout happens. And I think, I don't know where that came from, but I think that's still a mindset that somehow stays in place. And I think if we can back up and take the internal thermostat route and replace the high achieving mindset that isn't even real, and replace it with like checking in on our internal temperature, I think a lot will change. And like, I'm not, I think we could talk about boundaries, that this could be a whole other thing. So I won't even like touch that, because that's like a whole other like door to open. But Tracy, just to answer a little bit about like the boundaries, like when you start checking in with yourself, you're going to know what those even are. Like you're going to know how to even identify them just by starting to check in and getting to know yourself on that level. So that's where I would, if I were to like give you a takeaway or something to leave with, like that's what it would be. So I think overall, basically, just going back to what you would need to have in your life to make the number that you said true, like your 3s and 4s, like that's what I would challenge you to do, like this week, this month, forever. But as a starting point is to actually think about your number and what you thought of to make it true. Oh my God, Tracy, your dog in the back. And actually start to put it in practice and actually notice what changes in your life. And so, yeah, so I think that's like all I had. I think I can probably say a lot more, but you guys, I think putting in your own personal experiences kind of took this conversation where it needed to go. And if there's any other thoughts, any other questions, I'd love to like hear them and even just answer them for the remaining time that we have.
Before we do that, I don't want to cut anyone off, but Shanna, where can folks reach you if they have questions after today?
Sure. After today, you can reach me at, there's actually a bunch of places and I don't want to give you too many, but you can reach me, send me an email at shanna@incentivecoaching.com. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook and in the Teams channels here. So if you chat the channels here in the I4 event, I will answer back. Absolutely answer back. If you have any question, like honestly, I think this is a conversation that can be opened up even more and more. And even feedback or questions we get today, we can implement for other I4s or other events that we do. So if there's something you want to hear, like, please let me and let Liz and Kate know. But
Absolutely.
I really appreciate, but I really appreciate the conversation and all of the shares, because it just goes to show how, like, where everybody's at and what actions everyone wants to take on to actually create the experience that you want.
Thank you. I think that's a really good reminder that once you guys have access to the I4 intervention teams, you're in. Doesn't go away. Okay, we're not shutting that down. It's open. I mean, we sleep occasionally, so I wouldn't say 24/7, but if you're awake, please send us a message, and one of us, the three of us, Caitlin, Shanna, or I will absolutely get back to you. If we need to reach out to one of the other facilitators from this week, we will absolutely do so. That was why this was created. We want to make sure that you know that we are the incentive to do all of these things. I'm going to give that to you and have that source, and that's always available for you. So you're putting so much out there. It's time for you to take something back.
100%.